With roots seated deep in the rich history of Greek mythology, God of War deftly fuses puzzle-solving ability with robust combat and frenetic action, and a brutal yet absorbing tale of destruction and redemption.
God of War begins with Kratos, who has climbed to the top of the highest mountain in Athens in ancient Greece, and he has this line. He says, "Not even the gods of Olympus can save me now." And with that, he takes a step and he throws himself off the mountain, and right before he hits the ground, we flash back 3 weeks before, and that's really the game that you play.
When bringing God of War to life, the development team went back to their childhoods, where their passion for storytelling and Greek myths began.
Creative director Dave Jaffe came up to me and goes, "What do you think about Greek mythology?" I was immediately intrigued by it because there's a lot of monsters that everybody already knows who they are, and I wanted to play a game that I wanted to be able to rip Medusa's head off and turn people to stone, and I wanted to fight Cyclopses.
When they said, "Hey, we're thinking about Greek mythology for God of War," I was like, yeah, let's definitely do that. It's something that's been a passion of mine for a long time, and I know a lot of other random Greek mythology tidbits and elements that have proved pretty useful during the development process.
With such an incredible and revered history to draw from, the team was able to extrapolate their own unique anti-hero as timeless as anything Homer could have conjured up.
Kratos was a warrior in the Spartan army, and there was this one battle, and Kratos is there. He's about to just get killed by the barbarian king, and he calls out to Ares, the god of war, and says, "Make me this great warrior, save my men, save me, and my soul is yours." And Ares gives Kratos these blades that are attached to these chains, and he's now bound to these blades called the Blades of Chaos forever.
These chains are as menacing as the warrior wielding them, but they aren't the only way to effectively dispatch your enemies.
Initially, they were kind of in the air about where they wanted to go with the look of the weapons. They didn't want it to be too fluid and too nice and too dainty. So they wanted it to be more brutal and more aggressive, but it's really difficult when he's swinging things around and not feel like a very choreographed fight scene. So we kind of found that middle ground.
The combat system really comes to life when the player customizes their attack combos with a stunning variety of mythical weaponry.
You've got all kinds of really cool gadgets and weapons like the Medusa head, the Zeus thunderbolts. You can raise the dead from Hades to come up and fight by your side.
You know, you can dash, pop a guy up in the air, use the Medusa head, he falls down and shatters. You get extra points for that. So it's really giving the player a palette to work with and let them be the artist.
In its quest to appeal to slightly more mature gamers, God of War places a strategic emphasis on puzzles that require more thinking than most games of the action-adventure genre.
Most games today, the puzzle is pull the lever, the door opens, or find the key, put the red key in the red door, and it's just like, you've got to be kidding me. It's like, I was so excited to bring real puzzles back to this genre.
There are a lot of different ways to approach any given situation in God of War. You could be confronted with something that seems sort of insurmountable just by going in there and doing the combat, but if you think about it a little bit, there are resources made available to you in the level that'll allow you to get around that situation a little bit easier.
God of War is one of the most graphically impressive games ever created for the PlayStation 2, with stunning environments that are as vast as they are intricately detailed.
I'm always the guy that the engineers want to strangle because I try to absolutely push this engine to the max. In the opening level of the Hydra, we've got thousands of particles that are on screen. I wanted to have reflective surfaces that look like puddles where when the player walks through you can see his reflection. I wanted to have tons of geometry. I wanted to have wood splattering everywhere. I wanted to have 30 guys on screen. That's what we wanted to accomplish, something that was just visceral and massive.
All that kind of stuff is a programmer's nightmare, basically, because you have to kind of make sure that your engine runs as fast as it possibly can in every different scenario that the designers and artists have managed to create while building the game, and that's kind of a big challenge. So what we've done is just be very careful to make sure that all of our tools allow us to give good instruction to the artists and designers and how each of the different scenes in the game can be made to run as fast as they possibly can.
Plus you've got like all this fog in the background and one fog coming off of the water, particles spraying over the mass. We wanted the first level of God of War just to be something that, you know, it's going to make you want to play the rest of the game.
The producers know that the key to a great game is to engage the player at an emotional level, and God of War aims to do just that.
I think anytime you make a game, you set out to try to make emotion in the game. That when the player is playing the game, he feels emotion. And if it's gripping the controller tighter, if it's having to put it down and walk away because your heart's pounding, if it's just that you're having so much fun that you forget to go to sleep or you're late for your job because you're trying to solve a puzzle. I mean, that's what we wanted to create.
By utilizing the stories from our ancient past, God of War delivers the cutting-edge game of the future and what's sure to become a classic. But there's more to this game than meets the eye, and additional secrets will be revealed next month.
This is the game not only that I wanted to make 3 years ago, this is the game I've wanted since I was a 10-year-old kid, and I finally got to make it, and I'm so grateful, and I think players are going to be grateful too, because it's going to be cool.
The Oracle warned Tati to beware the temptation that came with her curse, for the mark was evil. They were not the only ones with interest in these words of power. Someone else was amassing a library of evil.
The way Rise of the Kasai is set up, it's sort of a prequel and a sequel. Rise of the Kasai can really stand on its own. You don't need to have played Mark of Creed to understand it or enjoy it.
We wanted to explain some of the origins of the Kasai and the Rakus, and to do that we really had to go back in time before the last game.
Rise of the Kasai is a strategic combat game that kind of allows itself to be more or less of either, depending on the player's interest.
Our approach has always been give the player a unique experience, and we'll use any tool in our arsenal to get that across.
The story definitely has its origins in classic literature and mythology. We're following Rao, who was the hero from the first game, and his little sister, who was an annoying 10-year-old in the last game, is now a 20-year-old warrior who's pissed off at the world. The animators had a lot of fun with Tati when they started developing her moves and her personality and the way she kills, whereas Rao is very noble, and to him, you know, the fight is honorable and he kills someone and they are dead and he moves on. Tati's much more like a cat playing with a mouse. One of the main conflicts running throughout the game's story is the relationship between Tati and the spell that she has on her back. The spell is absolutely evil and it seeks to control Tati. It's trying to tempt her to join the Kasai. It does this through bribing her with subtle tastes of the power that it could ultimately give her. This power is manifested in different skills that she can use in the game. An important weapon that Tati has in her arsenal is a puffer mushroom. You place one against the wall, you go and hide, and you wait for an unsuspecting enemy to come walking past and they're dead. Grizz is a mysterious character. He wasn't in the Mark of Creed. He's new to Rise of the Kasai. We kind of refer to Grizz as having a very zen approach to combat.
Grizz suffers from the same problem that Tati suffers in the game, which is he's marked with this evil tattoo. He's been very successful in controlling it. He's actually mastered it. And he's been trying to teach Tati that and try to keep her on the good path. Bamusu is the most boisterous of the four. He's a big guy that just loves to fight. And he'll laugh while he's doing it, and he enjoys it. He is noble as Rao, but just gets a kick out of it.
We take a real dynamic approach to how we use our camera in combat. We free it from behind the player and spin it around the action, zooming it in and out of the action to really give a sense of combat and energy.
So if you walk into an environment in the game, the camera takes a very casual third-person view, and it's really allowing the player at that point to just kind of examine the scenario and see what's happening. The minute you do something like actually get into a fight, the camera begins to play a different role. It'll actually start rotating around the characters. The reasoning behind that was to get the player to feel like he's involved in the fight. So we're throwing you in.
Before we start a level, we try to figure out generally what the cultural flavor is going to be. We try to infuse a lot of different cultures into it, like Middle Eastern cultures and Asian cultures and Polynesian cultures, all kind of mixed up together in a kind of a cultural soup. So you really feel like you're traveling within this world.
It all blends together. They've done a really good job of putting you in the environment and making you feel like you're in a very living, breathing world.
Rise of the Kasai does excel as a two-player online combat game. It's much easier to work together, especially for the strategy elements with two players.
One person could take the high road, the other person could take the low road. The battles could be joined. You could
join up with a partner and fight with the enemies, or you could sort of sneak around. One person could be stealthy, another person could be aggressive.
For the music of Rise of the Kasai, we really wanted it to fit with the way we created the environments. I met a guy named Mr. Bang many years ago. He's from the mountains between Thailand and Mongolia. The composers were on hand to see how he does what he does so they can create a tool set to integrate into their sound. So all the elements we use are organic instruments. They may have a more modern, maybe even techno feel in some ways, but all done organically. This really allows us to integrate that into our spiritual elements and bring a more realistic and exciting cultural experience.
It's just like
The one thing that unifies the group is their interest in art and in film. We have people that are from the video game industry that have been around for 15 years. And then we also have people from the animated feature film industry who have got a lot of experience in making movies. So the groups have kind of come together and found this common ground of what we think a game should look like.
we have a lot of very talented artists on our team who are all traditionally trained, so texture maps are all done by hand. That lends more to the organic sense about these levels. It's all just coming out of the mind of the artist and the talent of the artist.
They've got a great animation style that goes into the combat, and when you see it in action, it looks almost like a ballet. They've got a great sense of timing that they translate from the animation to the actual player, where you feel in combat you're almost dancing around, but you're dancing around in sort of a brutal, quick way.
We've likened ourselves to an independent film studio. We want to make things that are recognized for their artistic content and their depth.
We have two sets of cinematics. We have our in-game cinematics that tell the story with the actual characters and the environments in which the game kind of takes place. Then we have the bookend movies. These cinematics actually unveil more of the story before the actual game starts.
The whole style of these movies is a little bit more unique. It's almost like a living comic book, or, you know, if you were to see a Japanese print or a Chinese print sort of come to life, you know, sort of rice paper backgrounds and big black sumi brush and watercolor sort of thing.
We'll experiment a lot and try different techniques, different avenues, just to keep people entertained.
EA Sports.
Climbing up the wall, through the legs, doing what I gotta do. Y'all better recognize I got this sold up. What you gonna do? So serious, serious. Y'all know how I do. From the field to the street, grass, concrete, NFL Street 2. We gonna play today, we gonna play tonight. Everything is going good, everything is feeling right. So show me you got skill, bring your A game, come right now. You know this is no drill, was there a guy? Off the wall, behind the bike. On the city, on the walls. On the city, on the walls. You can't stop the train coming when I'm running the field. I step into the end zone cause I no need to yield. My team is too strong, my D is just right. I'ma put your QB on his back every time, day or night. We gonna play today, we gonna play tonight. Everything is going good, everything is feeling right. So show me you got skill, bring your A game, come right now. You know this is no drill, was there a doubt?
This game has not yet been rated.
They thought they were invincible. They thought it was inaccessible. They thought it couldn't be stolen. They were wrong. Stolen. Coming soon.
This game has not yet been rated.
Defender to Pong, from Atari to Vectrex, there's one place that you can go to meet the creators, get your hands on the machines, and play the video games of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the Classic Gaming Expo.
Classic Gaming Expo is an exposition that showcases video games from the early 70s to about 1990, both home games and coin-operated games.
Wandering the show, it's like a who's who of video game history.
And I did Yar's Revenge, I did E.T., I did Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Pong, it was a very simple game. It was meant to be an exercise. They didn't tell me that. I did it, and it became a hit. It became Pong.
Tron Solar Sailor, Kaboom, and Bridge. And Kaboom is a very simple game where you have a controller and you move buckets back and forth to try to catch the bombs that the mad bombers dropping.
Mind Strike and Thunder Castle.
With all these guys who laid the groundwork for the video games of today, we couldn't help but wonder what were some of their favorite classic games.
Defender, Robotron, and Millipede.
Centipede. Breakout was my favorite.
And every time I see Centipede, I got to play it.
After playing some of these games ourselves, we wanted to know what made them so addictive.
They were designed to be quarter suckers on purpose. They started off easy and then would ramp up, and these guys mastered the algorithm so that you'd get hooked and held and hooked and held.
And it's a very much like a spectator sport too, because these old arcade games are meant to be watched by crowds and you're supposed to be lured to these games.
As a matter of fact, I did a console version of Q*bert, and we timed it exactly to the arcade machine. And when we handed it over to the publisher, they said, "This is fine, but the game's over in 3 minutes," and the people, you don't want to slap them in the face with a home game.
The thing that's different about classic games is games that use these older technologies didn't have great graphics or sounds to rely upon. All they had was gameplay, and great gameplay holds up. A really good game is a game that's simple to play but difficult to master.
The good news for today's gamers is that a lot of these classic games are now available on your PlayStation 2.
We basically take games like Pac-Man or Defender, Joust, and we put them onto a collection and sell those out there.
Roger, Chief.
One of the latest games we've done is Midway Arcade Treasures. We're following that up with Midway Arcade Treasures 2, which is going to contain Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 and Primal Rage and all these classic games that, like a few years ago, weren't really considered classics, but now they are.
The type of gameplay in these things, these short, addictive, fast games, was something that had been lost in the new games, and that it would be nostalgic for the people who remember them, but that also kids who've never seen this would also recognize this.
Yeah, like the classic arcade treasures. You can play like Joust, Defender, Adventure, 720.
And I'm really happy and surprised to find out that I was right, that the kids really are going for it.
So yeah, it was really ideal, having been there and written some of the games that 20 years later, working on and producing the emulator with some of my own games being emulated inside it.
Television game do they find themselves playing the most on their PlayStation 2?
Biplanes, which is like a 2K game. Two people who know how to play biplanes on Intellivision.
It's a work of art. Well, it is like a ballet, a sky ballet.
Before we left, we wanted to take a closer look at the game that started it all, Computer Space 1.
The game that I really enjoyed the most to see here are the very oldest games. The original Computer Space that Nolan built in the funny yellow fiberglass cabinet. That thing barely worked. It was a vacuum tube television set. I mean, this is really ancient.
So, if you're feeling nostalgic for the olden days of video gaming, and you don't want to wait for next year's Classic Gaming Expo,
I can hardly wait till the next one.
Just flip on your PlayStation 2 and check out some of your favorite games from the past.
My name is Heather Grice, and I'm from Jackson, Tennessee. A little podunk town, but nonetheless it's there.
My name is Thomas Rucker. I'm from Brentwood, New York. Where I live is Long Island. It's really more of a suburban area.
I'm really big into video games. I've always been a big fan.
24 years old. I've been playing video games since I was like 6, 7 years old.
I absolutely love RPGs. I'm really addicted to those type of games.
I'm really a big fan of RPGs. Some of my favorite games now are Amplitude and Frequency. They're done by Harmonix. They're really good music games. I like Contra, Shattered Soldier, SOCOM 2, and Midnight Club 2, and Xenosaga.
Final Fantasy VII, of course, is like, to me, the mother of all RPGs. And Star Ocean Second Story is definitely like right up there, equal with Final Fantasy VII, just because it has more of a different kind of storyline.
I've got a mix of everything. I've got driving games, racing games, online games, pretty much everything.
A lot of platform action games and exceptional few racing games I'm into.
If it's a really good story, you'll really be into it.
Like when it comes to multiplayers, I still sit in quiet, you know, like I want to come up behind them, creep up behind them and like strike them without them even knowing I'm there, sort of thing. But I'm very competitive. I don't like losing at all.
Well, I'm in the Gamer Advisory Panel. I met some really good people there. On the GAP site, we talk about everything from games to what's going on in our lives, pretty much whatever, you know. It's really becoming a good community. And, you know, I hope it's around for a while. You know, got people of all ages from all over playing all sorts of games. It's just cool to meet people that are into games as much as you are.
I'm a really artistically inclined person. I lean more towards the Japanese style of it, you know, with the big eyes and the really large expressions, just because of the fact that they're very readable and the expressions are obvious, even without words. You know, you don't have like little thought boxes a lot in games because their animation's supposed to express that. They're supposed to be able to visually see it instead of actually reading it. When I'm not playing games or at work, I actually like to hang out with friends, just sort of do the whole goofing off thing.
I like to play basketball. I like to hang out with friends, play pool.
I read comics, work on like storylines and sketches.
Go online, you know, like chat and stuff like that, email.
I do like doing outdoor activities. Like at home we do a lot of wakeboarding and jet skiing, and I'm really big into that in the summer.
In school, I really liked English. I like writing. I have a good time writing. I like making up stories.
Well, I love video games, so I started to get like more curious about that and take more like different courses and stuff like that, getting involved in that sort of industry.
I think that'll be my career. Like when I finally figure out what I want to do writing. I want to like make movies and stuff like that.
For years, I've known that I've always wanted to do something like in the graphic world. I can get really creative with different things, and it's just definitely something I can see myself doing.
If I can get like a steady job, that'll be great. I can buy more games, you know, really buy games, play more games. I really like games.
What do you get when PlayStation and Camp Woodward, the leading action sports training facility, launch a search combing the country for the new school talent in BMX, skateboarding, and inline? It's the PlayStation Big Hookup. It all kicked off with a series of events held at 10 skate parks from Florida to California, crisscrossing the USA in search of new talent. Inliners, skateboarders, and BMX bikers were given the opportunity to show what they know in their chosen disciplines.
It's gonna be a good one!
30 finalists, one from each discipline from all 10 events, would be flown to Camp Woodward on PlayStation's dime for an all-expenses-paid, week-long competition, all vying for the grand prize, $5,000, and the use of Woodward's facilities on the East and West Coast for all of the 05 season.
We go to 10 different stops, 10 different cities. We do a contest. We give prizes to all the kids. There's one winner per sport, inline skateboard and bike. And those winners will go to Woodward Camp Week 12 to compete for the finals.
Each competition featured 5-minute open jam sessions, with 10 competitors going at a time under the watchful eyes of a panel of judges comprised of Woodward staff members. The top 10 riders then had a final session to select the winners.
We're getting crazy.
there was a bunch of things we looked for in today's winners. First of all, this contest is a little bit different from ones that I've been at before because we're kind of looking at kids' attitudes. Are they having a good time? Are they having fun? What kind of tricks are they doing? Are they going big? Are they doing tech stuff? Do they look comfortable? Are they flowing around? Are they looking a little sketchy? And just their overall riding.
Criteria we use for today's winners based on attitude, skills, consistency, and the willingness to ride hard and present a good image for skateboarding and a good solid rider, you know, all the way around, you know, a person with heart.
I like to see somebody who uses an entire street course or an entire skate park and can step onto the vert ramp and have a respectable session, step onto the street course, have a respectable session. They may not be the best at everything, but they're using a better line and they're incorporating the idea of what this course was made for.
It's so much fun. You're competing with, you know, people you know, and you know, this turned out to be more fun than a competition.
It was great. It was intense. Guys were throwing down and just made me get even more psyched up to go out there and throw stuff down.
All kinds of prizes were awarded, and the winners of the 3 disciplines at each venue were invited to spend an all-expenses-paid week courtesy of the PlayStation Big Hookup in Pennsylvania at Camp Woodward, the mecca of action sports training and hanging out.
Camp Woodward, you can't say enough good things about those guys. Anytime Camp Woodward gets involved, it's a win-win situation. They're just an awesome group of people, and you know, you can't ask for anything better than that. So I think anything Camp Woodward touches ends up being gold.
It's just a fun place to be because you can do your sport. You're there with people who are enthusiastic about it, the other kids who are there, as well as the instructors who are there. Everybody's just in love with the sports that they do. So they all kind of come to this place, this mecca, to learn together.
If you can get yourself to Woodward, then do it. It's awesome. It's so nice. East or west, they're awesome.
But the PlayStation Big Hookup is not just about competition and prizes. It's about discovering and developing new talent. Participation, sportsmanship, and the proper attitude are all key in making the young talent of today into the future stars of tomorrow.
I'm just making sure they got a smile on their face, you know. There was a lot of times throughout my skating when it turned into work, and I want to make sure that they don't forget it's fun first. I've been getting to meet and actually go out and skate with some talent that I would have never ever run into, you know, and now they're coming to Woodward to hang out with us, and I think it's an amazing thing. I wish it was going on when I was a young guy, you know.
So the prelims are over, and our top 30 winners are off on a week-long trip to the finals at Camp Woodward, courtesy of the PlayStation Big Hookup. Check out the finals in our next issue, where 3 of these gravity-defying Gen Nexters will ride off with season passes to the Shangri-La of action sports training. It's all when PlayStation Big Hookup rolls on.
Oh,